To call the Board of Finance meeting to order, the March 12th meeting at 6 o'clock. Moira Wertheimer is traveling on business for the record, and Jeff Blumenthal, I believe, has a family matter. He might be here, but I don't think he will be here for long if he comes.
He's not related.
So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We can all rise. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. On the agenda, we have, before we get into the Board of Ed, we have a police pension update. Is Tom Cook going to do it, or Mary?
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'll just go here. We just wanted to give you an update on the police pension. If you recall, the Human Resource Department and the Risk Management Department, which is Sean, has done a great job of auditing all of our personnel functions. In the course of auditing our police pension plans, we found that with our current employees, we would needed to stop funding and contributing for officers that reach a certain age. So we checked with our town attorney, and checked with our pension counsel, and checked with our pension advisors, and we have made all those corrections. So we've righted the long-term policy of the town, which was implemented from as far as we could find from the history of the town, and we're no longer allowing long-term employees to contribute to the pension plan. So as a result of that, we presented to the retirement subcommittee an update on what those changes would do to our pension plan and utilize the right assumptions to properly fund the pension plan. The town, as a credit to both Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, and Board of Finance, the town always funds our ARC 100%. We have done that again this year in this budget. You'll see in our Board of Selectmen budget when we present that there's $70,000 in additional funding in the pension line item for the police pension plan to make up some of the funding that we had a refund to the current officers. So we've already funded that in this year's budget. So we also are looking at conferring with council and settling any additional obligations that the town has. We will report that back to the Board of Selectmen and the Retirement Plan Subcommittee. And we're also doing a compliance audit to make sure that we have fully met our obligations historically. And we'll report that to the subcommittee as well and the Board of Selectmen. So we'll keep the Board of Finance updated. As you recall, when our investment plans go down, we have to fund our ARC a little bit more because you have to make up that differential even though you fully fund your pension plan. We anticipate the police pension plan will have the same result because we have to refund some of the contributions to current employees. We may see that the ARC will change going forward. We don't have a number. At this point, we've budgeted the number that we need for next year. But we can anticipate that we'll see some change in the ARC recommendation going forward. So we wanted to have this information. The Retirement Subcommittee had that information. The Board of Selectmen's been briefed. We've had an executive session with council to make sure the town fully meets the obligations. We want to make sure we get this right. We're working with our police officers to make sure we write it, and we'll bring forward any further recommendations as we have them. We are currently up to date in terms of funding that we need to fund as we know it at this point.
Now, basically, any of this correction was taken out of the pension funds themselves, not
Correct.
the town funds.
It has to be refunded because the
Taken out of the pension
overpayment was was into the
Right.
pension fund,
Right.
So the corrective payment of current employees had to be taken out of the fund. We couldn't
Doesn't
refund
have to
it.
be restored from town?
Well, what it makes is our unfunded liability
It'll
grows, and then you
change
pay
the
it in
ARC
your
going
future
forward.
payments.
Not for next year. You'll see the impact going forward. We are in police pension negotiations, so any changes to the police pension plan also need to be factored in going forward as well. So there'll be a lot of changes going forward, I anticipate.
So that police contract then still is not settled?
All the contracts are settled. We're up for next year. It's up again. And the police contract negotiations are in arbitration. So we are in arbitration on that. We have settled all of our contracts, including our pensions, with contributions from our employees, and we don't have a settlement for that with the police union.
The correction, and since the unfunded liability is spread over 21, 22 years now,
Exactly.
and we're not talking about a huge amount change in the arc, in any way, anyway. So,
You know, we,
$2,000 or $3,000 probably.
I don't know, we don't have those numbers, we're working with council, as I said. What we know the police pension had increased significantly over our other pension plans. There's greater contributions of employees in our other pension plans, and because the differential in contributions in the police plan, and because of the investment changes, we are seeing significant increases. I think it was 18% increase over last year's ARC, just to make up for that differential. So we have experienced significant increases to the payment plan because of the settled contracts. I'm so sorry about the loss of your dad. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you very much, appreciate that, Mary. We just had the update on the police pension, just what's going on, so Mary just
And I know
updated.
you're going to be moving, if we could just take a moment, I know you're going to be moving into Board of Ed discussions, so I know you're anxious, that's anxious to get to that. So, but I just wanted to report what I reported earlier. We did fund the pension plan at $70,000. We also did we have not concluded our budget discussions, but we did have communications with the Board of Ed about funding the second SRO officer at a cost of $40,000 contribution to that payment. So that is part of our discussions, and we are in ongoing discussions with the superintendent. We will discuss it with the Board of Ed, so I just wanted to report that.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we have the Board of Education budget presentation.
Great.
We'll turn it over to
Okay. Great.
the pros sitting at the table there to,
Well, certainly appreciate the opportunity again to come and talk through the budget. It's our third time to the table this year, so I know we'll have a much deeper opportunity for Q&A once we get through a few slides. So Burke is going to work his way through some slides. I've really separated it into three pieces. I think a format you're familiar with, some contextual information, just some comparative data points, talk a little bit about return on investment, and then discuss some of the main drivers that are getting us to our bottom line increase.
Are these in the material you sent us?
No. So these are kind of supportive slides that speak to the things in there. I don't think we. No, we did not. What's that?
oh, you want to move over here? Linda, you can move over.
Since
Why
Moore is not
don't you
here.
sit over there?
Take first shift.
Bring your name tag.
Okay.
Can't remember who you are.
Thanks. Oh, that's better.
Okay, so overall, we're requesting an increase of 1.05% over last year's spending, which is the equivalent of about $683,000. $65,602,817. So last time when we came before the Board of Finance and talked about where we were in the planning process, I had just presented to the Board of Education a 1.48% increase. And we had discussions about some of the goals that the Board of Finance had, about coming in at a 0% tax rate increase for the town. And we worked some information around the mill rate worksheets and realized that if we could come into a number close to 1, that would really be helpful in trying to attain that goal. So I'm pleased that we were able to do that. As I work through the budget, I'm also pleased to say we were able to do that without feeling like we were negatively impacting programs with reduction, cut reductions that weren't in the initial proposal. And I think that was important to our Board of Education as well. This is just a slide that paints a context of how we plan. We have a district vision, core beliefs, and strategic priorities. We work under a cycle of 5-year Board of Education goals. We're actually currently in the process of revising that. The graphic underneath, which says the instructional core, is kind of an interrelationship between teachers, our students in the materials that we teach. And it's just a reminder to us that when we make decisions in one area, whether they be staffing or curriculum decisions, they have a ripple in the other areas. So it's kind of a graphic that keeps us honest on that. It's a complex relationship between how we plan, the resources we provide, the experiences we have for our students in the teach, what we put in front of them in terms of curriculum and instruction. Going back to 2006-07, just to show relatively recent budget increases, and we can see we've talked a lot about the period of the last few years where we've been within that average range of a 1.5% increase. This year we're at a 1.05% increase. It's actually the lowest percent increase that we have on record in our history. So again, we feel good about the fact that we're coming in at that rate, but still moving forward a budget that supports our class size guidelines, maintains our current program, and actually provides some additional supports in special education in the areas of technology, which I'll speak to a little bit more in the future. This is a busy slide, but I know the topic of enrollment, budget increases, and FTE come up a lot. So we're trying to capture different ways to look at the information, as I know that conversation will continue to be ongoing and something we'll work through. But what Burke and I did is we went back in the historical sheet, which is that kind of trifold sheet that you have in your binders, and looked at different decades and different eras and what the Board of Ed had put forward with budget increases, which is the green line, and then we have the enrollment, which is the yellow line, going a little more horizontally. And you can certainly see we've had swings in enrollment before. We have a dip in enrollment when you start in that column to the right that's been pretty steady. We've talked about that quite a bit. We see that trend continuing for the next several years. But I guess the point of this has been in that course of that past few years, we've been consistent in moving forward budgets and avoiding that down 1 year significant spike the next year. And I think that's important when you move on to the landscape and kind of look out in the state of Connecticut. I think now you're starting to see that, a district presenting a low budget 1 year, coming back with a spike the next year, and trying to come in lower the next year. So we're trying to be consistent and thoughtful in our planning. This is data that we collect and we update throughout the budget process, and when we go to the town meetings, we'll have even further updated information. But it's superintendent's budget requests representing 95 districts that have submitted their data for comparative purposes, and where Simsbury lines up in that budget request. So you can see we're very, very much towards the right end of those budget increases. The yellow represents DIRG B, which are the comparative districts within our DIRG that we look at when we talk about achievement results and kind of look at data points. Down below you can see the DIRG B average is about a 2.63 increase. We have 16 of the 21 DIRG B towns tracked at this point. And when you put all the districts together, you have a 3% increase. So from an initial planning standpoint, this does not denote where the budgets will end up. So I want to be clear on that. This is an initial, but when we get towards the time when we present in public, we'll have how more of that closes out, and it will give you a different look. But again, we talked before. I feel we're honest and upfront when we come forward with a budget that states what we need and also tries to be upfront about the reductions we can take as a result of the enrollment.
Matt, can you just remind people what DRG stands for?
District Reference Group.
Okay.
So
For me, it's a diagnostic related.
Yep. Similar.
And just another
Sure.
on that. The towns are similar to Simsbury, but they're not necessarily our geographic neighbors.
Correct. So you have towns in there like a Cheshire, South Windsor, Glastonbury is in our DIRG, but you also have our neighbors here in Farmington Valley in our DIRG as well.
Are they all in our DIRG?
I do not believe Canton is not. Granby is. Granby's a DIRG.
Who's lower than us? Up there, which one's to the right? Who's lower than us?
That is Newtown. Yes.
East Granby, are they? They're a small little district, right?
We talked when we spent a lot of time in conversation with our Board of Ed, and when we came before, talking about in the initial planning process, how we can gain some efficiencies to get to that budget number that we present to you. So, of course, enrollment being a major driver, we were able to reduce 12 certified teaching positions, and this covers the span of kindergarten through grade 12. So those are actual bodies, those are actual positions that will be eliminated this year due to enrollment. Now, we've been clear to say to our staff, and as we talk through the planning process now, while this is difficult if people do lose positions, and we hope that we can, you know, in the perfect world, wash things out with retirements. It doesn't always happen, but we do not go over class size with these reductions, which has been an important value for us and an important planning tool to keep us honest in our staffing levels on the certified side. So 12 positions there, which is about 3.1% decline of our overall staffing. We talked prior conversations about transportation. We're transporting about 400 to 450 less students. Challenge is we have the same geographical area, but we feel with some consolidation of routes and really taking a look at things that we can take 2 buses offline and gain some pretty significant efficiencies there, which is a 6.5% decrease in the number of buses we're currently running. In Savingsburg, roughly about $80,000, I think, total in that from that reduction. Instructional office supplies and equipment were other areas we took a hard look at. And you can see there the reductions over prior year spending, and taking a look at reductions for electricity and utilities as a result of our modular removal program, which is tied to our facilities and enrollment work, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. We're also able to reduce 1 custodial position due to the decrease in the amount of overall square footage. So some significant things that are in current year budget that will not be in our budget next year as a result of the 1.05 and the enrollment trends that we're seeing. Just spend a quick minute in return on investment. We're certainly proud to be part of a community and be a major contributor to a community that's desirable, and I think desirable for a lot of reasons. And education is one of those main reasons, and I know that Hartford Magazine comes out, I think it's on an annual basis, and goes through kind of a rating or a promotion, so to speak, of the different towns and the desirable traits and how they rate out or rank out amongst each other. So in this particular year, Simsbury overall did incredibly well, and the part that the school system is looked at did very well as well.
And did they think we were young and hip?
That's, you know what, that's funny because I had this up to the Board of Ed, and that's what they wanted to talk about too. Neil Sullivan was in the crowd and laughed about that.
Wow.
I didn't look into the young and hip too much.
We're young in a state of mind.
We're focused on promoting the school system. But
I feel better
it looks as if it's all good, right? Right. Well, we certainly have areas on the achievement end that we need to continue to look at and improve at. Our achievement results continue to be strong. We're very proud of our advanced placement participation rate and scoring rate at the high school. The CMT and the CAP scores, which will be phased out this year with the new testing platform, we score out very favorably as well. So a lot to be proud of, I think, on the achievement end, and that's certainly supported by the budgets and the dollars that we've allocated over the years to support the school system. Often asked, and we've talked about it here, what separates Simsbury or Simsbury High School in particular from high schools in neighboring towns, and I would say it is the program offerings and the different opportunities that students have. With the new reform efforts have brought a lot of attention and a lot of refocus to how do we get kids ready for college and career. And I think we're in a great position at Simsbury High School to provide opportunities for our students that align with different areas of interest and skill sets that they can explore either in the workplace or beyond. So we have actually, when we expanded Simsbury High School a few years ago to provide an 8-period day, what we really did was expand elective opportunities for students as well. And we have various what we call learning clusters. And each of these clusters has a 4-course sequence. So if you looked at the biomedical sciences, you'd have an opportunity to take 4 courses within that sequence. It's called Project Lead the Way, that would prepare you to move on to college or prepare you the skills necessary for a career in that area. So it's something that we're proud of. There certainly is a cost associated with it, that the Board of Ed supported, but I think it's an area that separates us in terms of opportunity for students and things that are unique for them when they go through the high school experience. This is a comparative little discussion point, I guess, about per pupil cost, per pupil expenditure, and student performance. And I am not trying to say by any stretch that this is the end-all, be-all measure, and I recognize that there are many, many things that impact student performance in a community beyond the amount of dollars that you spend to support each student. But it's a complex chart, so I'll kind of walk through it the best I can. Going up the left-hand side vertically is the percentage of students that met all areas on the CAPT exam. So there are 4 different tests on the CAPT exam, and this represents students that pass all areas of the CAPT. If you go down horizontally to the right, that's a representation of the per pupil cost of all the districts in our DIRG. So this is a look at the DRG in comparative performance and comparative costs. So if you start down on the lower left, where it says lower PPE, that's our per pupil expenditure, and lower cap. So those diamonds in that, going up to the horizontal line where the yellow diamond is, anything in that quadrant represents districts that do have a lower per pupil expenditure, but also don't have student performance on this particular measure as high as Simsbury. And I don't count, I think it's about 9. It's about half of the DIRG. If you move over to higher per pupil expenditure and lower cap, 7. 7 of those in the DIRG have a higher per pupil expenditure, but also perform lower on the cap. Upper right, there is a district, one of the regional districts, that performed higher on this particular measure than Simsbury did. But Simsbury is the second highest in our DIRG on this particular measure, with no district that has a lower per pupil cost. So essentially a quick snapshot that on this measure, and it is one measure, there's not another district that outperforms us with a lower cost. So just, we're trying to look at different metrics, different ways to articulate how funding supports achievement.
So that,
Yep.
looking at this, from my angle anyway, it appears that the one that scores higher, the regional district,
Yes,
their per pupil expenditure, it looks like it'd be,
about 15.
no, it looked
Yeah,
like
high
maybe
14.
15,
Yeah,
15.5.
so higher, a little higher than ours.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the recent article in the Patch that was based on the Board of Ed data that I found pretty interesting. Not surprising that they pointed out a conclusion that the amount of money spent really is not correlated to performance. They're looking at a much...
That's where they had a lot of their bigger cities per pupil costs, which are very high,
Yeah, I was going to say, it's
Yeah.
not based just on
Absolutely.
the DIRG.
So I
it's
want to be
based
clear, there's a
on-
lot of factors
on
that go
all
into it.
towns
Yeah.
across the state. But I did find it interesting and a little confusing to me, because I'm not an education specialist, that they were pretty tough on the rankings. It was really looking at school-based performance, not just student cap testing, and I don't know all of the metrics that were involved in there. I'm sure you read the article.
No, I didn't, actually.
They ranked each school within each town
Yeah.
as excelling.
Oh,
I forget
okay.
the various rubrics that they used. And
So this is the new state accountability system?
yeah, it was the
Okay.
I don't know if that's what it was, but it was
Yeah,
Board of
that's
Ed
fine.
data.
Yeah.
And there were sort of 4 or 5 categories.
Yeah.
You could be great, good,
Yeah,
mediocre, or
Right.
in need of help.
right.
And Simsbury had one school,
Yeah.
Terrafil, that was in the top ranking, and the others were all good, but not in the excelling.
Can I give a quick story on that
Yep,
data?
but I'll just
Yeah, go
finish.
ahead.
But, I mean, to make you feel better,
Yeah.
none of our sort of competitor towns had
Yeah.
enormous numbers of schools in the excelling category.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's a very, very tough measure to meet. But again,
Yeah.
looking at our competitor towns, the amount of money that they spent was pretty
Yeah.
irrelevant to whether they were doing better or worse than us.
Yeah. So that's, to your point, it's a new system that I think we need to get used to and get comfortable with. Terrafil is a school that ranked out as an excelling school. We had a lot of conversations with our team. Henry James Middle School was a school last year that ranked out as excelling. The overall rating is ranked on overall student performance, but for more suburban towns, the higher weighting of the rating is based on subgroup performance, minority students, free and reduced lunch, ELL students. So it's a complex rating, and for example, with Henry James, our achievement scores went up everywhere from the prior year when we were excelling school. So I had to call and do my little inquiry with the state of why. We met every target that the state had set forward. The challenge was there was more than a 10% gap between our subgroups and our overall achievement level. So our high achievers achieved extremely high. And in a nutshell, if our overall performance was lower, we would have been excelling. So there's a lot of things with this new accountability system that actually have to get flushed out over time. But there is information in there that is very valuable as well, because there are areas we need to do better at. So I don't want to say that there are not, but it's tough to draw some sweeping things because it's brand new. We've had one run through of the data.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I appreciate the explanation.
Certainly ongoing efforts to mitigate costs. We've talked about our facilities and enrollment task force. We've met once this year, and we are going to move towards kind of phase 2 of our 3-year plan to remove the temporary space from the elementary school. So Latimer Lane space will be removed this summer, and then we'll come back next year and look at Central School. We have a meeting slated, I believe, for 2 weeks, the 24th. Well, we're going to take a look at updated projections, because I know, as you're aware, our projections came in, they were off this year from what we had thought by about 49 or 50, I think. So how does that change the trend line? And really look at some capacity information within our schools and go back and say, what should be the next steps we should think about in this? We see this as a long-range discussion. We know that it's not going to go away this week or next week. And I think we need to continue to think creatively about our facilities and how to best utilize them. But we need to shore up some of our new data based on what came in this October and what that does in terms of capacity in outlying years. And those are some of the cost savings associated with that. We've talked quite a bit about cooperative efforts with the town, and I know Burke will have some information to hand out after my presentation. But these are some of the things that we have in motion that we've talked about that have yielded some savings or will continue to be in the conversation for us as we move forward. So I think we'll see things that will yield from this down the road. I think we've had open lines of communication this year. I think the insurance piece, which is the next slide.
Can I ask a quick question
Sure.
before you go? It's on the modular classrooms.
Yeah.
When you remove them,
Yeah.
can they be reused somewhere?
They could. It's possible that they could. The Tooten Hills, when we went to the removal process for Tooten Hills, we actually advertised, and
Both Latimer and Tooten.
both Latimer
We
and
first did a
Tooten.
public advertisement to see if there was any interest in reuse.
Right.
And we ultimately got a few people sniffing around, but nobody formally proposed.
Right.
And so that was step one.
They were in pretty
Then
tough shape.
step 2 was cost to remove.
Okay, but they're actually sort of movable, or do you have to like deconstruct them and reconstruct them?
The Tooten ones, which was the largest, they had been assembled and joined, so they had to be broken apart. The one trailer at Latimer actually was removed and was able to be driven out of there.
Okay, good, thanks.
So, and that would leave after this year really the main modulars over at Central School, which house a piece of our preschool program, and we've had a plan to try to now centralize our preschool program at Squadron Line School because of the open capacity in the building. So we'll have that conversation at that time. Is there another use potentially for that, or do we look at selling? They're in the best shape by far of any of the modulars that we do that. The insurance consolidation effort, this was a multi-year process. Burke worked very closely with Tom Cook on this process and the insurance advisory committee as well. And this is something that when going to a single carrier, which we just finalized a few short weeks ago, will yield significant savings between the town side and the Board of Ed side that we were able to take advantage of in this current year planning, which is essentially the removal of the main driver that allowed us to go from a 1.48 to a 1.05. So I have what that looks like in numbers to show you on a slide in a few minutes. But when we talk about collaborative efforts, I think this is one that should be celebrated because the savings are significant and the savings are impact. I don't want to speak for Mary's budget, but impacting the bottom lines, I believe, in both my budget and hers as well. So.
Matt,
Yeah.
it's not clear to me whether, do we get all of those savings in year one? And do they continue each year?
They should.
It's really a one-time benefit to the operating budget, and then multiple years you don't have the
They're not small
Cost that
increments going forward.
Correct.
yeah.
It lowers the
limits.
base.
So it
And
It
mitigates
really
that
just
in
does
the
a
future.
one-time lowering of the base, but if you didn't do it, you'd have
Right.
multiple years of
Yeah.
higher.
And just
But it
based,
doesn't, I just want to, one time, some people might think one time and then it
Right.
goes back up to where it
Right.
was. It goes
I guess
down,
when we
it stays.
One time
I guess when we
operating
said one
budget
time, we had
benefit.
261,000 in that
But
line
yeah.
item that we're effectively removing in
Yeah.
this budget.
Yeah.
So.
but am I correct that just based on head count, if we're talking, say, 400,000, that about 80% of that accretes to the Board of Ed and the other 20% of the town, just
Yeah.
doing it pro rata? I'm not
Yeah.
sure that's the right way to do it,
Yeah.
but, so I mean, potentially that number could be, just doing simple math, $240,000 to $320,000 to your budget. That,
It's to the benefit of the combined plans that we don't have to increase. Our rates would be higher but for that. So it's not a direct correlation between that administrative savings and our budget directly, because in doing the rate setting process, we're looking at overall reserve levels, where the projections would have been, and then taking this into account as a part of that process.
but you need to go through a process with the Board of Selectmen about how you're gonna split that up, don't you?
I think it's more of an administrative calculation, as you've pointed out. I mean, we don't separate the claims as they're coming in, and it's really just the basic total members. We don't distinguish, and I think just as you've laid it out, the calculation that Sean and I would ultimately be able to agree on.
Are we gonna have a discussion about the reserve issue at some point?
I believe, in self-insurance,
Yeah.
I believe you factored that in.
Yes.
Are you gonna
Working
expand
with,
upon
working
that?
with working with Bob Lindbergh, that's what the total conversation was about. For the superintendent's first budget presentation, we looked at what was the lowest number that we could be comfortable coming in at, assuming some use of reserves, and then with further details once the carrier RFP work was done, gave us the green light to go further down in terms of where our increase would have been.
How much use of reserves do you think you're gonna use, did he say?
The target reserve level is 3.5 million, and I believe that we will use in excess of $1 million.
I mean, what we currently have is about, what, 5.7?
Or something.
5.7 in reserves,
Right.
which is, because they had a favorable year.
And that was
And-
as of June 30th. Right?
So there's a certain level you should come down to, and they're trying to not use it all at once, but use it over time to give benefit in the budgets.
So essentially, when we got this news coming out of the last meeting, we, as Berg said, we got with Tom, conference call with Bob Lindbergh, and posed the question, knowing where we are in the budget, would it be feasible with this positive news to eliminate that driver altogether for this year with where we are in reserves, what we've already utilized? So we asked that direct question, which is why we focused on the line item itself in terms of eliminating it.
So I just want to be sure I understand the savings and the genesis for them. I think would be twofold. One would be the consolidation of plans that allows for administrative expenses to be reduced, and then the other would be actuarially driven by the experience that we had over the past year that allows us to, again, from an actuarial perspective, have less in reserves